Hey everyone, welcome to Night Stories Craft. Tonight's stories are gentle, calming, and perfect to fall asleep to. Whether you're relaxing with some Minecraft in the background or just looking to drift off peacefully, I'm really glad you're here. Our first story is about a quiet regular at a small neighborhood laundromat, a man who kept folding other people's forgotten clothes, turning small piles of chaos into quiet acts of care. Settle in, get comfortable, let your thoughts slow down, and let's begin. I found the basement shop by accident, which feels appropriate for the kind of place it is. You don't really look for a typewriter repair workshop in the year where everything lives on a screen. You mostly look for Wi-Fi, or a place with enough outlets, or a coffee shop where they spell your name right on the cup. This basement wasn't any of those things. It was technically beneath all of those things. I'd taken a wrong turn on my way to a print shop. That's where it started. It was a gray Saturday in late autumn, the kind of day that feels like it exists between seasons. The sky couldn't decide if it wanted to rain. The air smelled like wet leaves and exhaust. I was carrying a USB drive with an unfinished portfolio and about 3 different flavors of quiet anxiety. The print shop I usually went to had moved, apparently, according to the apologetic cardboard sign taped to the locked door. We've relocated to Brookfield Ave. There was a map drawn badly in marker, squiggled arrows pointing. Somewhere. I stared at it for a good 30 seconds, pretending the lines would magically become clearer if I squinted. They didn't. So I turned onto the next side street, planning to cut through and find my way to the new location. That's when I saw the basement windows. They were low and narrow, almost at sidewalk level, caged with old iron bars flecked with rust. The glass was slightly fogged from the inside, like someone had boiled water down there recently. On one window, barely visible under the condensation, was painted a simple word in faded white letters: repair. That was it. No logo, no hours, no description. Just that blunt little promise. Normally, I would have walked past without thinking much, but as I passed, something metallic clacked faintly from below, followed by a soft bell sound, like 2 pieces of glass touching. It wasn't the sound of a TV or a radio. It sounded mechanical, old. I found myself slowing down, adjusting my grip on the strap of my bag. Curiosity is a funny thing. It doesn't always arrive as a sudden spark. Sometimes it's just an almost imperceptible tug at your sleeve, a quiet, "Hey, look." Set into the building's brick wall was a short, steep flight of steps leading down. The paint on the railing had peeled away in strips, revealing the metal beneath. At the bottom of the stairs was a door. Wooden, dark, with a small brass handle and a glass panel in the top half. Someone had taped another sign there, printed from an old inkjet in slightly fuzzy letters. Basement repair, typewriters, small machines, etc. Knock and come in. Typewriters, I murmured to myself, letting the words sit on my tongue. It felt out of place, like finding a rotary phone in the middle of a smartphone store. I should have kept walking. I had things to do. There were practical concerns to address, but something about the idea of a basement full of typewriters felt strangely grounding, solid. These opposite of all the vague digital stress buzzing in my head. Before I could overthink it, I went down the stairs. The air grew cooler with each step. The sounds of the street muted. I hesitated at the bottom, then knocked lightly on the glass as the sign instructed. Nothing happened for a few seconds. Then I heard it, the slow squeak of a chair, the shuffling of feet, and a voice. Low, a little rough, but not unfriendly. Doors open. I pushed it gently. A little brass bell chimed overhead as I stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the smell: oil, dust, and paper. It was the exact opposite of the sterile scent of a modern electronics store. It was warm, used, lived in. There was also a faint hint of coffee, like someone had brewed a pot hours ago and forgotten about it. The second thing I noticed: typewriters. Everywhere. They were on shelves, on tables, lined up on a long workbench against the far wall. Some were open, their black metal guts exposed. Others sat with their covers on, lined up in neat waiting rows. There were big, heavy ones in dark greens and grays, and smaller portable ones in faded blues and creams. Their keys glinted softly in the basement light, circles of black and white and sometimes yellowed ivory. Near the center of the room sat a man at a scarred wooden desk, cluttered with tools. Tiny screwdrivers, brushes, cloths, metal parts arranged in careful piles. He was older than me by at least a couple of decades, with graying hair pulled back into a low ponytail and a short, uneven beard. He wore a dark cardigan with the sleeves pushed up, revealing forearms dusted with oil. He looked up as I entered, glasses perched low on his nose. "Morning," he said. "Hi," I replied, suddenly very aware that I didn't have anything to repair. "I, saw the sign." He followed my gaze to the door, then nodded once. "Good, that's what it's for." His voice carried a dry little humor, the kind that doesn't draw attention to itself. I stepped further in, letting the door close behind me. The bell chimed again, softer this time. "I've never seen a typewriter repair place before," I admitted. "That's because most of them died," he said, not unkindly, "along with video stores and phone booths and patients." I laughed, a short, surprised sound. "So you're the last of your kind?" He considered that, then shrugged. "Last one in a 5-block radius, at least." He set down the small brush he'd been using and wiped his hands on a cloth. "You bring something in?" "No," I said quickly. "I mean, I don't own a typewriter. I was just curious. I heard something through the window." He nodded again, like that made perfect sense. "Sound travels," he said. "You'd be surprised how far a carriage return carries in the quiet." We looked at each other for a moment. The room hummed faintly with the old fluorescent lights overhead. "Sorry," I added, suddenly self-conscious. "Is it okay that I came in?" The sign said, "Knock and come in," he finished for me. "You did both. You're fine." He gestured casually toward one of the tables. "Look around if you want. Just don't drop anything on your foot. They weigh more than people think." I walked slowly between the tables, my fingers twitching with the urge to touch, but hovering respectfully above the machines instead. Up close, they were beautiful in a way I hadn't expected. I'm from the generation that learned to type on plastic keyboards, keys that sank with barely any resistance. These machines were different. Their keys were small, round, framed in metal. Their bodies were sleek or boxy, but always deliberate. Some had brand names in looping cursive: Royal, Olympia, Smith Corona, like signatures from another era. "Do people still use these?" I asked, not looking away from the nearest one. "Or are they just collector's items now?" "Both," the man said. "Some people like the sound, some like the feel. Some like the fact that the page doesn't beep or try to sell them something." I smiled at that. "Fair point." He rose from his chair with a small sound, like his joints had their own opinions about the movement, and walked over. Up close, I could see the ink smudges on his fingers, the faint coffee stain on the cuff of his cardigan. His eyes were sharp, though, clearer than I expected, gray with little lines at the corners. "You ever typed on one before?" he asked. I shook my head. "I've only seen them in movies," he hummed. "Movies like to leave out the jammed keys and the ribbons that smear ink everywhere." He rested his hand lightly on the typewriter in front of us. "You want to try?" I blinked. "Try on." His expression didn't change much, but I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "I let people test them," he said. "Anyone who wants to. Helps me too. Machines like to be used." "I don't want to break it," I protested. "If you break it, I'll fix it," he said simply. That's the arrangement around here. There was something oddly reassuring about his calm certainty. I pulled out the nearby metal chair. It scraped against the concrete floor with a grating sound, and sat down. He reached under the table and pulled out a sheet of plain white paper from a stack, feeding it into the roller with practiced ease. The machine clicked and whirred softly as he turned the knob, aligning the page. "There," he said, "index fingers on F and J, just like your computer. Everything else is the same, just louder." "What should I type?" I asked. He shrugged. "Whatever's in your head." That was the problem, of course. My head felt like a crowded room, where all the conversations overlapped and none of them made sense. I hesitated, then pressed the first key. It was harder than I expected, the effort noticeable. The key sank, and something clacked and struck, and a tiny black letter appeared on the clean white page. H. The sound echoed in the little room more than it had any right to. I tried another. E, then another. L. The man watched me, not hovering, not correcting my posture, just present. By the time I finished the word hello, my fingers were already learning the weight, the distance, the rhythm. There was something immediate about it, something physical. Each letter was a tiny commitment hitting the page with no delete key. I typed another word, then another. Nonsense at first, random phrases, half sentences, a line from a song stuck in my head. The bell rang softly when I neared the margin. A charming little ding, and the man leaned over, showing me how to push the carriage back with a smooth motion. "There you go," he said. "That's the dance." Something in me relaxed. For the first time in a long while, my attention narrowed to a single focused action. No blinking icons, no open tabs, no background notifications. Just the steady clack, 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 the mechanical movement, the words appearing as real, physical marks. I forgot, for a few minutes, about print shops and portfolios and the ever-present static of my to-do list. When I finally sat back, my fingers slightly sore, the man took the page gently, scanning what I'd written. There wasn't anything profound on it. A few scattered sentences about the weather, about the basement, about not knowing what to say. A line about the smell of oil and dust. He didn't comment on the content. "Machine likes you," he said instead. I couldn't help but laugh. That a technical assessment. The keys didn't stick, your rhythm's not bad, and you didn't stab the ribbon trying to fix a mistake. That puts you in the top 50% of first-timers. He slid the paper out fully and set it aside. "You live around here?" he asked. "2 streets over," I said. "Walked past this block 100 times, never looked down." "Most people don't," he said. "Basements are for deliveries and forgotten things." There was no bitterness in his tone, just a kind of simple acceptance. "I'm Sam, by the way," I said, realizing we'd been talking for almost 20 minutes without exchanging names. "Henry," he replied. "Or at least that's what's on my mail." "Nice to meet you, Henry." He nodded, "But if you ever want to practice or just listen to the noise, you can come by. I'm here most mornings." He returned to his workbench, picking up a thin screwdriver. Machines aren't the only things that work better when they're not alone. I thought about that all the way back up the stairs. I didn't go back the next day, or the day after that. Life rushed in as it usually does. The print shop was eventually located, my portfolio printed, my deadlines half met. Work piled up. Emails needed answers. A friend asked for help. Moving apartments. My sister texted to remind me I hadn't visited our mom in 2 weeks. But the thought of the basement kept floating up at odd moments. When my laptop froze and I stared at a spinning circle for 3 minutes straight, I thought of the decisive clack of typewriter keys. When my phone buzzed with notifications I didn't have the energy to read, I thought of the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights and the smell of oil. When I woke up too early one morning and lay there listening to the radiator hiss, I saw in my mind the crooked little table by Henry's desk, stacked with typewriter cases. 3 days later, on a Wednesday that felt like a Monday wearing a disguise, I found myself walking past the basement stairs again. This time, I didn't hesitate. The bell chimed when I stepped inside. Henry looked up briefly from his desk, then nodded, as if he'd expected me eventually. "Morning," he said. "Print shop still moved?" "Unfortunately," I said. "Map of their new place still looks like a crime scene diagram." He snorted quietly. "Brought anything this time?" I lifted my hand slightly. "Just me." "That's plenty," he said. He slid a different machine toward the chair I'd used before. This one, a pale green with rounded edges and keys that looked like little candy buttons. The brand name said Hermes in elegant letters. "Try this one," he suggested. She's lighter, good for thinking quickly. You talk about them like they're people, I observed, sitting down. They outlast some people I've known, he replied. He fed in a sheet of paper and stepped back. This time, I didn't need to ask what to type. My fingers found the keys with a little more confidence, a little less hesitation. I wrote about my walk over, about the cracked sidewalk, the woman watering plants on her balcony. Even though winter was taking bites out of the air, I wrote about a crow sitting on a lamppost, cawing into the wind like it had something urgent to tell the world. I wrote about discovering this place, the unexpected comfort of its quiet. The words weren't polished, they weren't structured like anything meant for public consumption, but they were honest in a way I hadn't let myself be in a while. Henry tinkered in the background, occasionally glancing over but never interrupting. When I reached the bottom of the page, he nodded approval. "You write," he said, as if it were a simple fact. "Not really," I said automatically. He pointed at the page. "That's writing. I mean, I don't write anything important, nothing published or serious." I shrugged. "I work in client support. Emails are my genre." He set down his screwdriver and walked over, picking up the freshly typed sheet. "You know," he said slowly, "these machines used to belong to people who wrote letters to cousins down the road. Grocery lists, notes on the fridge." Lifted the page slightly. "Most important things I've read didn't start out serious." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. He pinned the page with a small magnet to a corkboard on the wall, where several others already hung, some written in neat cursive, some in messy block letters. Snatches of sentences, half paragraphs, short observations. I hadn't noticed them before. "You keep everyone's pages?" I asked. "Not everyone's," he said. "Some people take theirs. Some rip them up right after. Some don't like the idea of their words hanging on a wall. That's fine." He stepped back, looking at the board. "But some leave them. Makes the room feel less like it's just me and the machines." "So now my weird ramblings are part of the ambiance?" I said. "Exactly," he replied. "Consider yourself decor." I came back again 2 days later, then again the following week. It wasn't a schedule, not exactly. But whenever the static in my head got too loud, I thought of the typewriters, the weight of their keys, the way the sound of typing filled the space without demanding anything from me. Henry never asked why I kept coming. He never pushed for details about my life. Our conversations stayed mostly around machines, small stories, observations. I learned he'd been in the building for over 20 years, that he'd watched the neighborhood change, old shops close, new ones open, that he liked early mornings and disliked loud music, that he made coffee strong enough to wake the dead if they were willing. In return, I told him little things, that my dad used to fix small appliances in our garage just for the joy of it, that I'd moved into my current apartment after a breakup and still felt like a guest there sometimes, that my job paid the bills but didn't feed much else. He listened, always listened. One afternoon, as I was finishing a second page, Henry rested his hand lightly on the top of the machine. "You know," he said, "most people who come down here fall into one of two groups, those who want their old things to work again, and those who don't know what they are looking for." I glanced up. "And which one am I?" He smiled faintly. "You tell me." I thought about that on my walk home. Winter deepened. The streets grew slick with slush. My breath fogged the air in front of me. The basement grew colder too, despite an old space heater humming bravely in the corner. Henry started wearing fingerless gloves, the kind that kept his hands warm but let him still feel the small parts. He also started leaving a mug for me on the edge of his desk, plain, chipped, always full of something hot when I came in. Coffee on some days, herbal tea on others. I never asked how he decided which. One particularly bitter day, I arrived with snow still melting in my hair, stamping my boots on the mat by the door. Henry looked up, took me in, then wordlessly nudged the mug closer. "Rough day?" he asked. "Just long," I said, wrapping my fingers around the ceramic. and loud. Feels like my brain's constantly buffering. He tilted his head. Buffering? You know, loading, spinning wheel, waiting for something to complete that never does. Ah, he said, the eternal loading bar. I've known a few of those. He gestured toward the machine set up for me that day, a dark gray one with crisp, clean keys. This one doesn't buffer, only refuses if the ribbon's dry. I sank into the chair, taking a deep breath. I didn't know what to write that day. Everything felt tangled and gray, so I just started. I wrote about the open plan office where phone calls overlapped and keyboards clicked without rhythm. I wrote about the way my shoulders bunched near my ears when my inbox flooded. I wrote about my father's hands, the way they'd move confidently over wires and screws, not hesitating the way my own hands did when confronted with anything physical. At some point, the words stopped being about work and started being about how tired I was of feeling like a tab open in my own life. The keys clacked steadily. The bell dinged whenever I reached the margin. The carriage slid back with a satisfying swipe. When I finished, I looked up and realized Henry had gone very quiet. He wasn't at his desk. He was standing a few feet away, pretending to fuss with a shelf, but his glance kept flicking toward the paper in the machine. I pulled it out, feeling oddly exposed, and set it aside. Ever think of writing more? He asked without turning around. What, like seriously? I replied. Just more than what fits in your head before you sleep, he said. Doesn't have to be serious. Doesn't have to be for anyone else. I stared at the page. I wouldn't know where to start, I admitted. He moved back to his chair, sitting down with a small sigh. Starting is overrated, he said. People think you have to begin at the beginning. You don't. You begin where it hurts, or where it feels less heavy. Rest fills itself in. Is that how you started fixing typewriters? I asked. Begin where it hurts. His mouth twitched. My first one was my sister's, he said. She needed it for school. It jammed. Nobody nearby fixed them anymore, so I opened it up and stared until it made sense. And it did? I asked. Eventually. He picked up a screwdriver, spinning it between his fingers. Most things will tell you what's wrong if you spend enough time with them. I thought about the page sitting beside me. Does that apply to people too? I asked quietly. He shrugged. Sometimes. People are louder about hiding it, that's all. We didn't talk about it more that day, but his words lingered. I started bringing a notebook with me, messy pages filled with half-formed ideas. I'd type, some of them, cross out others, watch them become more solid on the page with each mechanical strike. Henry never called what I wrote good or bad. He just called it honest when he said anything at all. Honest is better than good, he told me once. Good can be faked. It wasn't just me using the typewriters, I eventually realized. At first, I thought I was the only one Henry let test them, but one Saturday, I came in a little later than usual and heard voices drifting up from the basement before I reached the door. So you just push? Like that? Yes. Don't be shy about it. The machine won't break from a word or two. A laugh, a clack of keys, the bell soft and clear. I hesitated on the stairs for a moment, then continued down. Inside, a teenage girl with pink streaks in her hair sat at one of the tables, her fingers hovering over a black typewriter. A notebook lay open beside her, full of doodles and lyrics. Henry stood a short distance away, watching with his usual calm. When he saw me, he nodded. "Morning, Sam." The girl looked up briefly, then back down at the keys, cheeks flushed like she'd been caught doing something vulnerable. "This is weirdly satisfying," she said, pressing a few more keys. The machine clacked obediently. "Feels official, like whatever I type matters." "Official is one word for it," Henry said. "Some would say heavy." She grinned. "I like heavy." She typed another line, then ripped the page out with a bit too much enthusiasm, causing the machine to shudder. "Easy," Henry said. "She's older than both of us combined." The girl held up the page, reading it, then folded it carefully and tucked it into her notebook. "Do people really write whole stories on these?" she asked. "They used to," Henry replied. "Some still do." I slipped into my usual seat at another table, listening as they talked about music, school, the novelty of something that didn't have a screen attached to it. Henry was patient with her, answering questions, letting silence exist between her sentences without rushing to fill it. After she left, promising to come back with actual ideas next time, I glanced at Henry. "You just let anyone try?" I asked. "Anyone who's curious," he said. "And who doesn't treat them like props?" "Props?" He made a face. "Had a guy come in once, took 20 photos of himself writing on one, never hit a key. Called it vintage content. Machine hated him." I laughed. "The machine hated him?" "I could tell," Henry said firmly, but there was a glimmer in his eye. After that, I started noticing signs of other visitors. A new page pinned to the corkboard with sprawling handwriting about a first date. A short poem left folded under the weight of a paperclip. A line in the margin of one sheet. "It's nice to make a noise that isn't apologizing." The basement was never crowded. People came in singles, sometimes in pairs. A college student, a retired woman, a man in paint-splattered jeans who wrote out a shopping list with an intensity that made it seem like scripture. Henry treated them all the same, calm, open, gently respectful of their words without making a fuss. It felt rare. The world I spent most of my time in, a world of emails, notifications, and per my last message, didn't have much room for the kind of quiet attention he gave to people's half-finished paragraphs. In its own way, the workshop began to feel like a small refuge carved out beneath the city, a place where noise was allowed to be mechanical, where the only loading circle was the time it took to feed in a sheet of paper. The day I brought my father's old typewriter in, it was snowing. Not heavily, just a slow, patient fall of flakes, like dust in reverse. The kind of snow that makes everything feel slightly muffled. My mother had called the night before. "We're finally clearing out the back room," she'd said. "Do you want to come by this weekend and take anything you want?" "Your father left. A lot of things." Her voice had wobbled on that last part. It had been a year and a half since he died, but time doesn't work the way people say. It doesn't cleanly move you away from pain. It just layers other things on top of it. I went over on Saturday, boots leaving wet prints on the hallway tiles I'd run down as a kid. The back room was stuffed with boxes, stacked high with old magazines, tools, wires, screws, things that might be useful, written all over them in my dad's practical handwriting. Near the back, half covered by a folded blanket, was a case, black, hard, with a handle. Recognition hit me like a small, sharp thing. I knelt, fingers trembling just a little, and pulled it out. The latches were stiff, but gave way with a metallic pop. Inside was the typewriter, dark teal, dusty, with keys that looked like they'd been waiting. The brand name was faded but still legible. "I didn't know he still had this," I said quietly. My mother stood in the doorway, arms folded, sweater sleeves pulled over her hands. "He wouldn't get rid of it," she replied. "Even when we got the big computer." Said the typewriter knew him better. I ran my fingers lightly over the keys. "I remember the sound," I said. "He used to write lists on it, and thank you notes. He always typed those, even when everyone else used cards from the store." She nodded, eyes softer than they'd been at the start of the day. "You should take it," she said. "I don't want it to just sit there. He'd like it if someone was using it." I hesitated. "It's probably broken," I said automatically. "Maybe," she replied, with that practical tilt of her head that I'd inherited. "But maybe it just needs someone patient." I thought of Henry, of his hands moving, deftly, over old machines. "I know where to take it," I said, which is how I ended up on the stairs to the basement workshop, snow melting on my scarf, carrying the case carefully with both hands. Henry looked up as I came in, eyes flicking to the case immediately. "That's a familiar shape," he said. "Got something for me?" I set it on the nearest table and opened it gently, like introducing two old friends. "It was my dad's," I said. "I'm not sure if it works." Henry stepped closer, peering down at it with an expression I'd come to recognize as professional fondness. "She's in good condition," he murmured, fingers hovering just above the keys. "Bit of dust. Ribbon's probably dry, but the bones are there." He glanced at me. You want it working again? Yeah, I said, the answer rising from somewhere low in my chest. I do. He nodded once, decisive. I can do that. He lifted the typewriter from the case with surprising care, like it was heavier in meaning than in weight. You in a rush? He asked. No, I said. Take your time. He slid the case aside and set the machine on his workbench, beginning a methodical exploration, checking the carriage, testing each key, listening to the faint variations in sound. I watched for a while, then drifted to my usual seat, picking up a different machine. My typing that day felt different, weighted, like the words had to pass through something else before landing on the page. At one point, Henry called me over, pointing to a small scratch on the side of my dad's typewriter. See this? He said. Looks like someone bumped it against a desk or something heavy. Didn't break anything. Just gave it a story. I traced the scratch lightly. I remember that, I said slowly. He dropped it once, got so mad at himself. I smiled, the memory unfolding. He apologized to the typewriter afterward. Henry's smile was small but genuine. Good man. I looked at him. You haven't met him. He trusted a machine enough to apologize to it, Henry said. I've met enough people to know that says something. I swallowed past the sudden lump in my throat. Henry went back to working. I went back to typing. The basement hummed with the soft sounds of repair and clacking keys, and the subtle whisper of old things being coaxed into usefulness again. By the time the snow outside had thickened and the light through the basement windows had turned blue, Henry called me over one more time. Try it, he said, stepping back from my dad's typewriter. It sat on the table, freshly wiped down, keys gleaming slightly, a new ribbon threaded in place. I sat in front of it, heart thudding unexpectedly hard. My fingers hovered over the keys, and for a brief second, I saw my father's hands there instead, broader, surer, stained with engine grease. I inhaled slowly and pressed the first key. The sound it made was familiar, not identical, of course. My memory isn't that precise, but close enough that something inside me shifted. It was the sound of late nights when I'd pad down the hallway to get water and hear him typing in the kitchen. The clack of keys weaving into the quiet. I typed his name first, then mine, then a line I didn't think about until it was already there. I'm still here. Henry pretended not to read over my shoulder. How's it feel? He asked. Strange, I said. Good. Like he's in the room and not in the room at the same time. He nodded slowly. We carry our ghosts in objects sometimes. That a professional opinion? I asked, voice a little shaky. It's an occupational hazard, he said. You bring me machines that remember people. I just keep them from forgetting. I stared at the page. Thank you, I said quietly. You're welcome, he replied. Then he added, more lightly, first repair is on the house for emotional reasons. Any future ones, I start charging. I laughed, wiping at my eyes with the heel of my hand. Fair enough, I said. After my father's typewriter was fixed, I brought it home. It lived on a small table near my window, next to a stack of paper and a mug full of pins that I barely touched anymore. I didn't use it every day. Some weeks, I didn't touch it at all, but knowing it worked, that felt like a kind of closure that hadn't been available before. Whenever I needed to feel anchored, I'd set a sheet of paper in it and type a few lines. Sometimes memories of my dad, sometimes things I couldn't say out loud to anyone, sometimes just the date, as if marking proof that I was there. And whenever the keys started to feel a little sticky or the ribbon faded, I'd carry it carefully back down the basement stairs to Henry. He'd take it in his hands, nod approvingly, and say something like, "Good, she's being used. That's how you keep metal honest." The workshop stayed the same in many ways. The bell still chimed when the door opened. The fluorescent light still flickered occasionally and had to be coaxed back to life with a firm tap. The air still smelled like oil and paper and faint coffee. But time did its quiet work there, too. New pages appeared on the corkboard. Old ones yellowed slightly at the edges. People came and went. A college student moved away but sent a postcard, which Henry pinned near the exit. The teenage girl with the pink hair dyed it blue and started writing longer paragraphs, the corners of her pages filled with tiny stars. I watched all of this unfold in slow, quiet increments. One evening, as I was closing the cover on my dad's typewriter after another small repair, I realized how much the basement had become part of my internal map of the city. Not just a place I visited, but a place I relied on, even if I wouldn't have admitted it in those exact words. Standing at the top of the stairs, case in hand, I looked down at the small rectangle of warm light spilling from the workshop door and thought, if I ever leave this city, this is one of the places I'll miss most. Not because of the machines, because of the man who took them seriously, and by extension, the people who sat in front of them. Because of the way the workshop allowed you to be quiet without being alone. Because of the way words, even half-formed and messy, were given weight just by being placed on a page that resisted them slightly. Because of the simple, unspoken kindness of someone whose job was to fix things that most of the world had decided were obsolete. A few months later, I brought Henry a small gift. It was a framed photograph, nothing fancy. I'd taken it on my phone, printed it at one of those kiosks that still exist near the pharmacy. It showed the workbench, one of the typewriters, a bit of the corkboard in the background. The light had caught just right, turning the metal keys into soft points of reflection. I handed it to him, suddenly shy. I thought maybe the room deserved to see itself once. He held it carefully, studying it with more attention than I expected. He said. It looks older than it is. That's good? I asked. It's honest, he said. I like that. He set it on a shelf near his desk, leaning it against the wall. It wasn't ceremonious. He didn't make a big deal out of it. But after that, whenever I glanced over, I saw it there. A small loop, the room looking back at itself through another person's eyes. Do you ever think about retiring? I asked him one day, months after that. He snorted. From what? Sitting in a basement talking to machines and the occasional human. That sounds like a job, I said. It's a practice, he replied. Job implies there's somewhere else I'd rather be afterward. He picked up a tiny spring with tweezers, slotting it into place with careful movements. I was worse at being retired than I am at this. I frowned. You were retired? Years ago, he said. Worked in a factory before. Machines of a different sort. They tried to celebrate me when I left. Gave me a plaque. I lasted 3 weeks at home before I started taking apart my toaster out of boredom. So you opened this place, I guessed. Eventually, he said. I started with 2 machines. Word got around. People brought more. The building was cheap. The rest happened. Do you ever wish you'd done something else? I asked. He paused, considering. Sometimes I wish I'd kept better notes, he said finally. Machines remember, but people forget. I've seen a lot of hands pass over these keys. I glanced at the corkboard, at the pages pinned there, the stories that had decided to linger. You've kept more than you think, I said. He looked over, following my gaze. Maybe, he said softly. The last time I saw Henry before everything shifted again, it was early summer. The city had warmed, the air in the basement carrying a faint hint of street heat mixed with the machine oil. The door had been propped open to let in a little circulation. The bell chimed lazily in the moving air. I was halfway through a page about nothing in particular when I realized the rhythmic sounds from his workbench had stopped. I looked over. Henry sat with his hands resting on the edge of the table, staring at something in the middle distance. His expression wasn't pained exactly, but there was a tiredness there that went deeper than usual. You okay? I asked. He blinked, seeming to return to the room. Just thinking, he said. About what? He took a slow breath. About what happens to all of this when I'm gone. The directness of it caught me off guard. I opened my mouth, then closed it. The machine in front of me hummed faintly. The last key I'd pressed still raised slightly. I mean, he continued, gesturing vaguely around the room, this building will still be here. These machines might find their way to some warehouse or thrift shop or trash heap. But the shape of this place, the way it holds people's words for a little while, the way it lets them try, he trailed off. You make it sound like the room is alive, I said, trying to keep my tone light. He considered that. It is, in a way. Any place that holds people's attempts at being honest is. But I'm not foolish. I know I'm one person with one pair of hands. Hands don't last forever. My chest tightened. You're not that old, I said a bit too quickly. He smiled, the lines at the corners of his eyes deepening. I'm older than these overhead lights, he said, and they've been replaced twice. We sat in silence for a moment. What would you want to happen, I asked, if you could choose? He looked around the room again, slow and deliberate. I'd like it to keep working, he said, even if it's different. Even if someone paints the walls or plays music I can't stand, I'd like there to still be a place where someone can sit, hit a key, and hear their thoughts make noise. I didn't know what to do with the tenderness of that answer. So I did what I always did in that room. I wrote it down. After I left that day, the words stayed with me. I'd like there to still be a place. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a request. It was just a wish, spoken into the oil-scented air of a basement specializing in obsolete technology. But it landed in me like something carefully placed on a shelf, waiting. I didn't go back for a couple of weeks after that. Not because of what he'd said exactly. Life simply rushed in again. A coworker quit suddenly, leaving the rest of us to pick up the slack. My mother had a minor health scare that turned out to be nothing really, but still required 3 appointments and a lot of worry. The heat wave hit, making the idea of going anywhere that wasn't air-conditioned feel like a personal attack. Each time I thought about the basement, I pictured the air thick and still, the machines sitting in their rows, the fluorescent lights buzzing a little angrier than usual. I meant to go. I planned to. I just didn't. Until one particularly long Friday, when everything at work had felt like climbing a sand dune sideways, and I found myself walking toward the basement almost on an autopilot. The bell chimed when I opened the door, but the room was empty. The machines were still there, lined up neatly. The corkboard still held its patchwork of pages. The air still smelled like oil and dust. But Henry's chair was empty. His tools were laid out on the table, arranged in their usual order. A mug sat near the edge, half full of something that had gone cold. I stood there for a moment, listening to the unfamiliar sound of the room without his presence. "Hello," I called, feeling vaguely foolish. No answer. I walked around the tables, half expecting him to emerge from some hidden back corner I'd never noticed, but there was nowhere else. The workshop was just this one room. On the desk, beside a small pile of repair tickets, lay an envelope. My name was written on it, in Henry's careful, slightly slanted handwriting. My heart did a small, unpleasant flip. I picked it up, the paper warm from the lingering heat of the room. Inside was a single sheet. It wasn't long. Henry never used more words than necessary. "Sam, I've had some health things come up. The kind that require more white rooms and less machine oil. I'll be away for a while. If you're reading this, you found the room without me in it, and I'm sorry for that. I meant to tell you in person, but timing rarely asks for permission. The landlord knows I'm pausing operations. I don't know yet if pausing turns into ending. That's above my pay grade. In the meantime, I wanted you to know 2 things. Your father's machine still has a lot of years left in her. So do you. This room was quieter before you showed up. Quieter isn't always better. If the doors stay locked one day, it was still worth it. Every page was worth it. Be well, Henry." I read it twice, then a third time. My eyes blurred near the end, the words swimming slightly. I sank slowly into the nearest chair, letter held in both hands. The workshop around me felt wrong, like a stage with the lead actor missing. I don't know how long I sat there, long enough for the light from the small windows to shift an inch on the floor. long enough for the bell to chime softly once when a breeze nudged the door. Eventually, I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. I stood up, walked over to the corkboard, and pinned it there. Not because I wanted other people to read it, there weren't many others who came regularly enough for that, but because that's where words lived in this room. I couldn't think of a better place. Before I left, I sat at one of the machines. Not my dad's, it was at home, but one of Henry's, a sturdy dark blue with a satisfying heft to its keys. I fed in a sheet of paper and typed a line, then another. I wrote about walking into a quiet room, about absence, about how you can feel someone's presence in the arrangement of objects, even when they're not there. I wrote, "Boss, this place feels like a held breath. I hope whoever needs it next learns how to exhale here." When I was done, I slipped the page onto the corkboard underneath Henry's letter. Then I turned off the lights, locked the door. The key was still there, on a hook by the frame, as if he'd left it for someone to borrow, and climbed the stairs back to street level. The city noises hit me in a rush. Car horns, distant music, people talking on phones. I stood there for a moment, blinking in the brighter light. Then I walked home, the ghost sound of typewriter keys echoing in my mind with every step. I don't know how the story ends yet. Henry might come back. He might not. The landlord might clear out the basement and rent it to someone who wants to open a storage unit or a band practice space or something that doesn't smell like oil and coffee. Maybe, one day, someone else will open a door in some other basement and decide to line it with machines that click and clack and give people a place to put their thoughts. What I do know is this. There was a stretch of time in my life where, a few meters below street level, a quiet man taught me, without ever saying it outright, that old things aren't useless just because the world moves on, that tools can carry memory, that rooms can hold gentleness, that there is value in work that doesn't trend or scale or get measured in likes. He fixed typewriters. He let strangers test them. He made space for the noise of their thoughts. And my life is softer and steadier because I went down those stairs one gray Saturday and knocked on a door that said, "Repair." Sometimes now, when my father's typewriter clacks in my apartment, I hear a second sound layered underneath it, the echo of other machines, other hands, other attempts. And somewhere beneath all of that, in the rhythm of keys and the small clear ring of the carriage bell, I hear Henry's calm voice saying, "Machines aren't the only things worth keeping going." Our next story is about a quiet basement workshop where an older man restores forgotten typewriters and lets strangers sit down and listen to the sound of their own thoughts hitting the page. Get comfortable and ease into the story. Let's begin. I used to think laundromats were places you just passed through. You went in, dumped your clothes, fed a machine, some coins or a card, stared at your phone until the timer beeped and left. The kind of limbo space that belonged to everyone and no one at the same time. Not a destination, just a hallway between dirty and clean. That changed the day I realized someone was quietly cleaning up after the part of the process everyone else pretended not to see. The laundromat near my apartment looks like every other small neighborhood laundromat you've ever seen. Faded blue sign that just says Mushroom Laundromat. One with one letter perpetually flickering. Big front windows that fog up in winter so it looks like the whole place is breathing. The door has a bell that sounds apologetic when it rings, like it knows it's interrupting something. Inside it's rows of steel machines, scuffed beige floors, and 3 plastic chairs along the wall that make your back hurt if you sit for too long. The walls are painted a color that might once have been white, but has since settled into light gray that has seen things. There's a TV up in the corner that always seems to be playing either local news, game shows, or some cooking competition where everyone is unreasonably stressed about basil. I started going regularly after the washer in my building died in the most dramatic way possible. Smoke, alarming noises, a note from the landlord that just said, "Out of order until further notice." And then, 2 weeks later, replacement delayed. Further notice became probably never. At first, the laundromat was just another errand. My work schedule was all over the place. So I usually ended up there on weeknights. Too late to be busy, too early to be completely empty. The kind of time when the tired people come in with their last bit of energy for the day and try to get one more necessary thing done. It took a few visits before I noticed him. Well, that's not entirely true. I'd seen him before. Everyone had, probably. He was just part of the laundromat landscape. A man in his late 40s or early 50s maybe, with dark hair going gray at the temples and those kinds of deep lines on his forehead that looked more like worry than age. He wore the same style of clothes most days. Plain zip-up hoodie, t-shirt, jeans that weren't new but weren't worn out either. He had the look of someone who dressed for not being noticed. I thought he worked there at first. He always seemed to be around when I came in, spraying down the folding tables, wiping lint from the tops of the dryers, emptying the trash. Not in a uniform, not behind the counter, but doing little maintenance tasks with the tired efficiency of someone who'd done them 1,000 times. But there was a woman who clearly did work there. Maria, according to her name tag, the one who handled the change machine, answered questions, and manually coaxed the stubborn washer in the corner into cooperating. She wore a branded polo shirt with the laundromat's name embroidered on it, and moved with the practiced rhythm of, "I've been here forever, and have seen worse than whatever's happening now." The man didn't have a name tag, or keys, or any kind of formal authority vibe. He just floated around the edges. The first time I really noticed what he was doing was on a Tuesday. I'd rushed in after work with a bag full of clothes and a brain full of static. It had been one of those days where everything felt urgent and nothing felt satisfying, and by the time I got to the laundromat, I was running mostly on caffeine and autopilot. I loaded my clothes, added detergent, swiped my card, and sank into one of the plastic chairs with the intention of zoning out until it was time to switch everything to the dryer. My phone battery was low, so after 5 minutes of scrolling through the same 3 apps, I put it away and did something I hadn't done in a long time. I just looked around. That's when I saw him folding. On the far end of the row of dryers, there was a small mountain of clothes. No basket, no person nearby. Just a pile of clean laundry that someone had clearly taken out of a machine, and then abandoned, or forgotten, or gotten distracted from. Abandoned. Laundry is a laundromat classic. Usually, it turns into a kind of polite turf war. People pull it out of machines with 2 fingers, dump it unceremoniously onto the nearest empty surface, and feel righteous about it because I needed the dryer. After that, no one touches it. It just sits there until the owner comes back, or, if they never do, until Maria bags it up and puts it in the mysterious, unclaimed bin in the back. But this time, the forgotten clothes were changing shape. The man stood there, sleeves pushed up, folding each piece with slow, precise movements. Not the chaotic ball fold you do when you are in a rush, the careful kind you do when you know these items will be put straight into a drawer. He didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. He didn't sigh dramatically about people these days. He just folded. T-shirt, pair of jeans, towel, stack by stack, making neat piles on the table. I watched for a minute, not even pretending to be subtle about it. Maria came out from behind the little counter, saw what he was doing, and smirked faintly. "Again?" she asked. "They left it for almost an hour," he replied without looking up. "If they come back, they should at least find it not on the floor." "You're too nice, Tomas," she said in the tone of someone who'd said this before. He shrugged. "It doesn't cost me anything," he said. So, his name was Tomas. I filed that away. I didn't say anything to him that day. When my washer cycle ended, I moved my own clothes to a dryer, set the timer, and went back to my seat with the strange feeling that I'd just glimpsed a scene in a movie I'd walked in halfway through. The next week, I saw him do it again. Different pile, different machine, same careful folding. This time, it was a basket someone had left sitting on a chair, full of clothes already dry, but clearly forgotten. The kind of deal you see a lot. Someone puts their stuff in, starts the dryer, and then decides, I'll just go grab coffee while this runs. Time becomes fluid. Coffee turns into a phone call, turns into running one more errand, and somewhere on a plastic chair, in a small laundromat, their laundry cools into a wrinkled, shapeless mass. Tomas eased the basket onto the folding table and started in. I pretended to read the sign above the change machine while I watched him from the corner of my eye. He sorted first, making small stacks: socks, shirts, towels, kids' clothes. He matched socks, even the tiny ones that always seemed to vanish. He folded the towels into neat rectangles, smoothing the edges. When he picked up a little pink shirt, he paused for a moment, thumb brushing over the cartoon animal printed on the front, then folded it gently like it was something fragile. A woman came in a few minutes later, slightly out of breath, keys jangling in her hand. "Oh my God," she said, heading straight for the chair. "My stuff." She stopped when she saw the basket wasn't where she'd left it. For a second, panic flashed across her face. Then she spotted Tomas at the table. "Is that mine?" she asked. He looked up, almost apologetic, as if he'd been caught doing something he shouldn't. "Sorry," he said quickly. "You didn't come back for a while. I didn't want anyone to move it and throw it somewhere. I was just—" She stared at the piles. Her expression softened. "Oh," she said. Then, "You folded all of that?" He shrugged, a little embarrassed. "I had time," he said. She blinked, like she didn't quite know what to do with this level of unsolicited kindness. "Thank you," she said finally. "Seriously, I was sure it would all be on the floor by now." He stepped back from the table, wiping his hands on his jeans, even though they were clean. "It's no problem," he said. "Better folded than wrinkled, right?" She laughed a little, some of the tension draining from her shoulders. "Definitely," she said. "My kids will destroy it in 5 minutes anyway, but it's nice to see it neat at least once." After she left, basket tucked under her arm, I watched Tomas move on to wiping down the top of a washer like nothing unusual had happened. Maybe this is just his thing, I thought. Some people stress clean. Some people stress bake. Maybe he stress folds. Still, it stuck with me. I kept coming back week after week. Dirty clothes, detergent, card swipe, plastic chair. My routine didn't change much, but my attention did. I started seeing him everywhere. He was there on Mondays, inventing order out of someone's chaos. There on Thursdays, pulling a lone sock out of the lint trap and placing it on the folding table where it might be reunited with its partner. There on Saturday afternoons, when the place was weirdly busy, moving around the machines with the practiced choreography of someone who knew exactly where everyone would step. He didn't fold loads that were obviously mid-process, stuff someone had just put in and walked away from. He only touched the ones that had clearly been left long after the cycle was done, the ones that were on the verge of becoming junk in the corner or mysterious laundry no one wanted to deal with. I noticed he never went through the pockets. He'd pick up jeans or hoodies or jackets and give them a quick, respectful shake, but he didn't stick his hands into anything. If a crumpled receipt or a stray coin fell out, he'd set it aside, on the table, like a small offering to the gods of, "I'll grab it next time." The first time I actually spoke to him, it had nothing to do with folding. It was a Wednesday, late, the kind of weeknight when the laundromat felt like a refuge for people who had put everything off until the last possible moment. I was half asleep, watching my clothes tumble in the dryer when the machine stopped abruptly. Not with the usual gentle slowdown, just stopped, mid-spin. My damp clothes slumped against the window in a sad heap. I frowned, stepped closer, and checked the display. It flashed an error code I'd never seen before. "Seriously?" I muttered. Tomas appeared at my elbow like a summoned spirit. "Which one?" he asked softly. "Oh, this one," I said, pointing. "It just died on me." He peered at the display, then at the drum inside. "Sometimes they do that," he said. "Overheat a little." "How long was it running?" "Not even the full cycle," I said. "Maybe 10 minutes. He pressed a sequence of buttons, like someone entering a secret code. The machine beeped resentfully and then flashed a different message. "Try opening and closing it once," he said. I pulled the door open. The damp, warm laundry smell puffed out. I closed it again. He hit start. For a second, nothing happened. Then the drum jolted back to life with a low hum. "How did you do that?" I asked. He shrugged. "I've seen Maria do it," he said. "They're old machines. Sometimes they need persuasion." "Thank you," I said. I was already mentally calculating how much I'd hate putting these back in a bag still wet. "Yeah, that's the worst," he said, with the voice of personal experience. "You get home and everything smells like wet dog and regret." I laughed, startled. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not a full smile, but close. "I'm Alex, by the way," I said, because it felt weird not to. "Tomas," he replied, as if I didn't already know. He wiped his hands on his hoodie again. "You come Wednesdays, right?" "Whenever I run out of socks," I said, "which feels like always." "That tracks," he said. "This place is like a calendar. I know what day it is by who shows up." "You must be here a lot," I said. "Yeah," he replied. "You could say that." He didn't seem inclined to expand on that, and I didn't push. The drier word, he moved on to wiping down the folding table. After that, our interactions became small but steady. "Hey," he'd say when I walked in. "Hey," I'd reply. Sometimes we'd exchange a sentence or two about the weather or the TV show playing overhead. Once, when a particularly dramatic detergent commercial came on, he gestured at the screen and said, "I've never seen anyone that excited about stain removers in real life." "They've never met my coffee habits," I said. He chuckled, but what I kept noticing more than anything was the folding. It wasn't constant. Some nights, everyone stayed on top of their loads, hovering over the machines like nervous parents. But on others, there would be at least one orphaned pile, a hoodie draped over the edge of a table, a small tower of children's clothes slowly tilting toward chaos, a jumble of sheets and pillowcases that someone had clearly underestimated. And each time, as long as Maria didn't swoop in first, Tomas would drift over and start tidying. He never rushed, never acted like he was doing a favor. It was more like he was smoothing out a wrinkle in the room. One particularly quiet night, curiosity finally got the better of me. "Do you work here?" I asked, as he finished folding a stack of towels that were definitely not his. He shook his head. "No," he said, "I just help out sometimes." "Do you at least get free laundry out of it?" I pressed. He smiled, that small, almost secret smile. "Nah," he said, "I pay like everyone else." "Then why do you do it?" I asked. "The folding, I mean." He hesitated, looking down at the shirt in his hands. "Habit," he said after a moment. "And it's something to do." It wasn't an evasive answer exactly, but it wasn't the whole story either. Still, I let it sit. People are allowed to have their rituals without justifying them to strangers with detergent bottles. Over time, I started to piece together little details. Sometimes he came in with his own laundry, a single basket, neatly sorted. Other times, he didn't seem to have any of his own clothes to wash at all, just the hoodie on his back and his hands in his pockets. He'd drift from machine to machine, checking lint traps, straightening abandoned hangers, picking up dropped socks. He always left right before closing. Not in a last-minute rush, but quietly, as if he didn't want to be the final person out the door. One rainy night when the air outside felt like soup, the traffic on the main street was terrible, and I ended up at the laundromat later than usual. There were only a few people there, an older man reading a newspaper, a woman with headphones knitting while her clothes spun, and Tomas wiping water off the entrance mat with a worn-out mop. I threw my stuff into a washer, added extra detergent because everything just felt damp, and sank into a chair. The TV was showing some crime show rerun where everyone spoke in the same low, tense tone. I wasn't really watching. My thoughts wandered. I wasn't in a great place in my life at the time. Nothing dramatic had happened. It was just a slow, dull accumulation of stress. Work felt like a treadmill. My apartment felt small. My social life felt like something other people did. I carried this buzzing anxiety around like a second phone. Always on, always low battery, never fully shut off. The steadiness of the laundromat, the hum of the machines, the regularity of the cycles. The simple task of transferring clothes from one place to another had started to feel weirdly comforting. Like, if I could get this one thing done, just this, the rest of my life might follow. "Hey," Tomas said, appearing near my row. "You okay?" I blinked. "Yeah," I said automatically, "just tired." He nodded, glancing at my machine. "It's the weather," he said. "Feels heavier. Makes everyone look like they didn't sleep." "I didn't," I admitted. "Work?" he asked. "Mostly," I said. "And my brain being annoying." He huffed softly. "Brains are overrated," he said. "You could probably just operate on laundry mode and do fine." "Laundry mode?" I repeated. "Yeah," he said. "Sort, wash, dry, fold. No overthinking. Just do the next small thing." "That sounds boss nice," I said. "It's not a bad way to live," he replied, almost to himself. I watched him for a moment, the way he stood with his hands in his pockets, the slight tension in his shoulders. "What about you?" I asked before I could second-guess myself. "You look like you spend a lot of time here." He gave a tiny, almost embarrassed shrug. "I do," he said. "I like the noise." "The noise?" I echoed. "It's predictable," he said. "The machines sound the same every time. The beep, the hum, the clack of zippers. TV changes, people change, but the machines," he gestured around us, "they're consistent. It's calming." I thought about that. It made a surprising amount of sense. "It doesn't bother you?" I asked. "The chaos, I mean. People forgetting stuff, leaving messes." "That's the part I can fix," he said. "Or at least, make less messy." He didn't elaborate. He just gave the entrance mat one more pass with the mop and moved on. Later that night, as I folded my own clothes, I found myself mimicking some of his techniques, smoothing the fabric before folding, aligning edges, making neat stacks instead of my usual rushed piles. It felt good, it felt deliberate. On a different week, I came in and saw something that explained a little more. Tomas was standing at the far table, folding slowly, his movements heavier than usual. On the seat next to him was a small plastic bag from the supermarket with a sympathy card half visible inside. Maria was leaning against a machine nearby, arms crossed. "I'm sorry about your mother," she said softly. "Yeah," he said. "Thanks." My hands stilled on the laundry bag I was carrying. "I know it's stupid," he added. "It's not like it was a surprise." But he trailed off, shaking his head. "It's not stupid," she said. "Losing your mama is never not a big deal." He shrugged, eyes on the shirt in his hands. "It's been a month," he said. "Everyone else has gone back to normal. Work, bills, whatever. I still keep expecting her to call, or to see her name on the caller ID." Maria nodded. "Grief doesn't care about calendars," she said. He let out a small breath that was almost a laugh. "She would hate it if she knew I was moping in the laundromat," he said. "She used to say, 'Tomas, there are clothes to fold. No time to feel sorry for yourself.'" Maria smiled. She sounded efficient. "She was," he said. "Had 6 of us to keep alive. Folding laundry was like her superpower. You could drop a disaster on the couch, and she'd turn it into neat stacks in 10 minutes. "Now I see where you get it," Maria said, nodding toward the table. He paused mid-fold. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess." I looked down quickly, feeling like I'd overheard something not meant for me, even though they hadn't exactly been whispering. When I glanced back up, he'd finished the stack and was placing it carefully in a basket with a note taped to the side. "For machine 7, left at 5:30, in his neat, blocky handwriting. That night, when he walked past me, I didn't know what to say. "Sorry about your mom" felt too big to be dropped casually between Tide Pods and dryer sheets, but saying nothing felt wrong too. As he passed my machine, I managed, "Hey, Tomas?" He stopped. "Yeah?" I heard," I said awkwardly. "About your mom. I'm sorry." He studied my face for a second, like he was trying to gauge how much I knew. "Thanks," he said. "She lived a long life. I just wasn't ready for it to be over yet." "I don't think anybody ever is," I said. "No," he agreed. There was a brief silence. The TV in the corner played a canned audience laugh. He glanced at my half-folded pile. "You're getting better at that," he said. "At what?" I asked. "Folding," he said. "Your stacks used to lean more." I laughed, the tension easing a little. "High praise from the expert," I said. "Don't let it go to your head," he replied, but there was warmth in it. After that, the folding made more sense. It wasn't just a quirky habit. It was a muscle memory, a connection to someone who had once made order out of chaos for a whole family. Maybe it was grief in motion. Maybe it was love doing what it knew how to do. Once I saw it that way, everything shifted slightly. The way he smoothed out wrinkles, the way he matched socks carefully, the way he built small, perfect stacks. It all looked less like a chore and more like a language. I started staying a little longer after my loads were done, lingering in the plastic chair even when everything was folded and ready to go. Sometimes I'd help if there was an overwhelming amount of forgotten laundry and he was clearly going to do it anyway. "Here," I'd say, grabbing a towel. "I can take that pile." "You don't have to," he'd say. "I know," I'd reply, "but I'm already here." He accepted the help with a small nod, like it cost him something to let someone share the task, but he was willing to try. On one of those nights when we were folding a particularly chaotic collection of kids' clothes, tiny socks, cartoon pajamas, t-shirts covered in glitter, I finally asked what had been sitting at the back of my mind. "Do you ever get annoyed?" I said. "At what?" he asked. "At people just leaving their stuff," I said, "like you're the laundry fairy." He let out a small laugh. "Sometimes," he admitted, "a little, especially when I see the same basket week after week, same person, same 'oh my God, I forgot' face." "And you still do it?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, "because I also know what it feels like to be so tired you forget your own name, let alone your laundry." He folded a small pair of jeans, hands moving almost automatically. "When my mom got sick," he said, "I was working 2 jobs, taking her to appointments, handling all the paperwork. Sometimes I'd start a load at the laundromat near her place and then just fall asleep in the car, or get stuck on the phone with insurance. I'd come back 2 hours later, sure everyone would hate me, and find my stuff either dumped in a corner or, if I was lucky, stacked neatly on a table." "You had a Tomas," I said. "Yeah," he said. "I guess I did. I never knew who it was. Maybe it wasn't the same person every time, but it made a difference." He placed the tiny jeans on a pile gently. "So," he continued, "now that I have a little more time, this is just my way of paying that forward, I guess." "That's really kind," I said. He shrugged. "It's just folding." "It's not just folding," I said. He didn't argue, but he didn't agree out loud either. I think that's the thing I keep circling back to when I think about him. For him, it really was just folding. Not in a dismissive way, but in a matter-of-fact one. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He wasn't filming himself for the internet or waiting for gratitude. It was just a thing he knew how to do that made life 2% easier for someone else. And he did it over and over in the background where most people wouldn't even notice. Of course, some people did. There was the college student who rushed in one night, hair half dry from a shower, looking like she'd just remembered she'd left the stove on. "My stuff," she gasped, scanning the machines. Tomas pointed to the table where her clothes were already folded, a neat stack of t-shirts with her university logo on them. She stared. "You folded this?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "It was done for a while. I didn't want it to wrinkle." She looked like she might cry for a second. "I had an exam," she said. "I lost track of time. I thought—" She broke off. "Thank you. This is really nice." He just nodded. "Don't worry about it," he said. There was the older man who came in searching for a missing shirt, grumbling about thieves, and then fell quiet when he found it, folded and waiting, exactly where he'd left it. There was the tired-looking nurse who came straight from a night shift, scrubs in a bag, dark circles under her eyes. "Oh," she said quietly when she saw the folded stack with her name on a post-it. "Oh, thank you." She didn't say anything else for a moment, just put her hand over the top of the pile like she was grounding herself, then took a breath and smiled. Tomas accepted all of their thanks with the same slightly awkward, slightly shy nod, like he still wasn't totally used to it. "See," Maria told him once, after a particularly grateful customer left. "You're making people's days." "I'm folding their socks," he said. "Same thing," she replied. There were also people who never knew. The ones who rushed in, grabbed their baskets and left, too stressed or distracted to notice the difference between a pile they'd left and the neat stacks they found. But even for them, I think it mattered. Maybe not in a way they could articulate, but maybe later, when they got home and unpacked their basket, they felt some tiny, unexpected sense of relief. Oh, they might think. At least this part wasn't a disaster. I started to notice that when I had a particularly bad week, the kind where everything felt like it was fraying at the edges, I'd look forward to laundry more than usual. Not because I enjoyed lugging a bag around, or feeding the machines, or spending money on dryer cycles, but because I knew that inside those fluorescent lit walls, there were things I could count on. The hum of washers, the beep of finished cycles. Maria's loud greeting when a regular walked in. Tomas in his hoodie and jeans, moving through the aisles like a quiet caretaker. And somewhere in between loads, the bloom of these small, almost invisible kindnesses. On one particularly heavy night, after a week where a project at work had fallen apart, a friend had canceled on me twice, and my head felt like it was full of bees. I sat alone on one of the plastic chairs while my clothes spun. It was raining outside. The bell on the door jingled occasionally as people came and went in damp jackets, umbrellas dripping onto the mat. Tomas was there, of course, wiping down machines, emptying trash, occasionally glancing up at the TV during the loud parts of a game show. I stared at my reflection in the washer window. I looked tired, full in the head, as someone else might have said. Laundry mode, I muttered to myself. Sort, wash, dry, fold. What's the next small thing? The washer beeped. I pulled my clothes out, transferred them to the dryer, started the cycle. When it beeped again, I pulled them out and walked over to the table. As I smoothed out a t-shirt, I felt someone standing across from me. I looked up. Perfect corners, Tomas said, nodding at my half-folded pile. I'm learning from the master, I said. He smiled. Hey, I added, suddenly feeling that tug of something unspoken. Can I ask you something? Sure, May, he said. Does this help? I asked. Like for you? He frowned slightly. The folding. Yeah, I said. All of this. Being here. The routine. He thought about it for a moment, eyes dropping to his hands. Yeah, he said finally. It does. How? I asked gently. He placed his palms flat on the table, like he needed the contact. When my mom died, he said, everyone wanted me to talk about it. He let out a breath, which is good, I guess. People meant well. They wanted to make sure I was okay, but every time I tried to explain how it felt, the words got stuck. It was like trying to fold a sheet in a windstorm. I smiled weakly at the metaphor. But laundry, he gestured around us. Laundry makes sense. Dirty, clean, messy, organized. Start, finish. You can't fix a whole life in an hour, but you can wash and fold a load in that time. And some days, that's more than enough. He picked up one of my shirts and folded it along the lines I'd started. Plus, he added, it reminds me of her. But in a manageable way. Not in the all the memories at once drowning way. Just in the this is a thing we both did way. I swallowed, and that makes a lot of sense, I said quietly. Yeah, he said. We folded in silence for a bit. It also makes me feel, he searched for a word. Useful, I guess. Grief can make you feel like you're just taking up space, like you're not contributing anything. But here, at least, I can make someone's day 1% less frustrating. I looked at the stack of my now neatly folded shirts. You make mine more than 1% better, I said. He tilted his head. How? I don't know, I said honestly. Just knowing this place exists the way it does, with you in it, with the routine. It makes the rest of everything feel less wild. Like there's at least one corner of my life where things go from messy to ordered, and I don't have to fight for it alone. He considered that, then nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. That's what I want for this place, I think. For people to walk in feeling like their lives are all tangled and leave with at least one thing that's sorted. He finished folding the last shirt and placed it on my pile, aligning the edges carefully. There, he said. Laundry mode complete. I smiled genuinely for what felt like the first time all week. Thanks, I said. For everything, not just that shirt. He shrugged, but I could tell it meant something to him. It's just folding, he said again. But it's not, I replied. We both knew we were talking about more than clothes. Time moved on. My life shifted in ways I didn't always see coming. I eventually got a different job, one with less chaos. I made a few new friends. I slept a little better. The building's washer was finally replaced, but by then, I'd gotten so used to the laundromat that I kept going anyway. Not every week, not always at the same time, but enough. Sometimes I'd walk in and Tomas wouldn't be there, and I'd feel a flicker of worry. Then, the next time, he would be, and things would slide back into their familiar rhythm. Once he wasn't around for a couple of months. I asked Maria, trying to sound casual. His brother was sick, she said. He went to stay with him for a while. He'll be back. And he was. A little thinner, maybe. A little quieter. But when someone left their clothes in the dryer too long, he still walked over, rolled up his sleeves, and started folding. I don't go there as often now. Life's changed again. I moved to a different apartment in a different part of the city. The new building has its own laundry room, functional and anonymous, closer and cheaper. Sometimes I use it. Sometimes I don't. Every now and then, on days when my head feels too full, or when I miss the hum of those old machines, I take the longer bus ride back to my old neighborhood with a bag of clothes and step into that fogged-up laundromat. The bell on the door still sounds apologetic. The TV is still too loud. There are more stickers on the change machine now, a few new machines, a fresh coat of paint that can't quite hide the history underneath. Maria's still there some days. So is Tomas. I don't always catch him folding someone's laundry, but I know he still does it. I can see it in the neat stacks on the tables, in the notes taped to baskets, in the way people occasionally leave with a slightly dazed expression, like something small and unexpected just went right in their day. When I'm there, we talk a little. New job still good? He asks. Mostly, I say. Less chaos, more boring emails. I'll take it. You look less tired, he says. That's something. How's your family? I ask. They're okay, he says. We've gotten used to the new normal. He pauses. I still expect her to call sometimes, though. I think that's allowed, I say. He smiles faintly. Yeah, he says. I think so too. And sometimes we don't say much at all. We just fold, each in our own small square of space, making order out of fabric while the world outside spins in ways we can't control. I used to think laundromats were places you just pass through. Now I know better. They're places where people quietly hold each other's lives together in small, practical ways, one load at a time, one folded shirt at a time, one forgotten basket saved from chaos. Most of those acts go unseen. Most of the people who benefit never know who helped them. They just find their clothes a little warmer, a little neater, a little easier to deal with than they expected. But I know. I know there's a man named Tomas who turned his grief and his history into a quiet kind of service in a fluorescent lit room with 3 plastic chairs and a flickering sign. And knowing that makes the world feel just a little gentler. So if you ever find your laundry folded in a laundromat when you're sure you left it in a heap, maybe think of him or someone like him and know that somewhere there are people who make small, unglamorous corners of life kinder just because they can. It might be just folding to them. To the rest of us, it's proof that even in the most ordinary places, someone is paying attention.